Yo, what up, y'all? It's your boy Fro. Happy Frotober 2025. And today I'm going to be talking about the brand new addition to the Monster Netflix series, Season 3, The Ed Gein Story. So ain't nothing to it but to do it. Charlie Hunnam, on the more emotional and physical side, does a great job playing Ed Gein here. He has to reach such a dark and depraved headspace while playing the role, and he goes all out, and I give him props for it. But through the entire season, I became very 50-50 on the vocal choice that he gives Ed, and I honestly couldn't stop thinking of Winnie the Pooh. He talks like this, very quiet and very shut in. I will say that Laurie Metcalf does a wonderful job playing Ed's lunatic mother, Augusta Gein. When I saw her name casted as the mom, I knew that she was gonna knock it out of the park, and she might have my favorite performance in the entire season. We do get to see the woman that was part of creating a monster in Gein. Her mental and verbal abuse and her announcing every woman as a harlot or a Jezebel really shattered her son. Now, the show likes to blend reality and what's happening in Gein's mind, and while Ed did have hallucinations in real life, I felt the execution of them in here was very odd and damn near whimsical for such a dark topic. Ed is portrayed as very peculiar and even strange, but in reality, he was deemed as very friendly and eccentric. In the series, Ed's creeping people out right off the bat, like the two girls in the diner that he comes across, or the two kids that he has to babysit later on, which is fictional. I do wish we got to see more of the father George and his depiction of a shattered but abusive alcoholic. We do see him fight with Augusta and him slap her, but she returns a punch and knocks him on his ass to the floor, but it feels about 2 minutes long. I felt we could have had an episode easily revolving more around George and Augusta, other than some of the creative choices that they make with other characters. But I'll get back to that later. Now, moving on to some of the major changes in the show that were absolutely fictional. Some people say that he may have killed his brother in a fire and covered it up, which the show does portray, but there's no direct evidence of it at all, let alone Ed hitting him in the back of the head with a log. Adeline Watkins was a real woman and she did know Ed Gein, but strangely enough, during the time of Ed's crimes being discovered, she claimed to have a decades-long romance with him, and that he even proposed to her. But years later, she claimed that the original interview was exaggerated and contained false statements, and denied having a romantic relationship with him. They knew each other for about 20 years, but the interactions bottled down to going to the movies with each other occasionally. So it's not really confirmed if the two were in a deep romantic relationship together, let alone how the show portrays them. I will say it is very weird because going to the movies with a woman and yada yada, that does sound like a date. So it's up to you to decide. Personally, I didn't love a chunk of Adeline's inclusion in the story and making her just as sick and twisted as Ed by being his accomplice and taking pictures of the corpses, and also making her a big city and a small city type of girl, and also making her a hoe. I feel like I would have enjoyed the story arc between these two if the show bottled it down. I felt like there was just way too much screen time devoted to these two characters for me. Ed Gein did have a very morbid sexual curiosity with the corpses that he fiddled around with, but he did not engage in having sex with the corpses. There was no evidence that Ed Gein ever penetrated dead bodies. For the show to add in two very graphic scenes of necrophilia rubbed me the wrong way, and it was one of the bigger departures that I can think of from reality. There's a lot of things that I can stomach. I have very tough skin, but man, these necrophilia sequences were too much for me. The depiction of Bernice Warden being promiscuous and her overall relationship with Ed, I thought it was pretty distasteful how the series went about her. There's absolutely no evidence of Bernice having a relationship with Gein, and to paint the real person as somebody that she absolutely wasn't, a hoe in shorter terms, left a sour taste with me. From what I remember, in reality, Bernice was described as being classy and very hardworking, being the owner of her hardware store. I can understand that maybe the show is trying to connect the older age gap of Gein and Bernice and the creepy nature of Ed and his mother, but I still found this creative choice to be very odd, their relationship overall. I feel that Bernice deserved a better portrayal. But I'm not faulting the actress Leslie Manville because despite my grievances with the portrayal of the character, I think the actress did a really good job. Ed did shoot Bernice in the head at her store, and he did string her up like a deer in the barn. Her son Frank was a deputy, but Frank found Ed's name on a receipt and not from a name tag on a fictional gift from Bernice. There's also no evidence of Frank beating up Ed at the crime scene. From what I understand, Ed was arrested with no struggle. I will say that I did like Frank beating the shit out of Ed and found it pretty satisfying on a fictional sense. I don't mind that the series touches on Perkins, Hitchcock, Toby Hooper, and the character of Buffalo Bill. Ed Gein is a major blueprint for their works. But I felt the show added very unnecessary scenes like following Perkins and his HIV, his down low encounters, focusing largely on Hitchcock and the creative process of Psycho, having Ed help out authorities track down Ted Bundy, which did not happen, and Richard Speck's overall inclusion in the series finale. There's a lot happening here that I felt would have worked better for another series or even a film. We focus a lot on the people and the works that Gein darkly inspired, in my opinion, a little too much. The overall story of Ilse Koch, the bitch of Buchenwald, and how she killed and tormented Jewish people in World War II had moments of being very creepy and extremely disturbing. But her influence on Ed plays a big part in the show. We even have a ham radio sequence between Gein and Elsa that I felt was very strangely put together. Now, there's a lot of sex scenes that I felt were very forced and shoehorned in, and I can understand the sexualization of Gein's crimes, but even the sex scenes from other characters were too much. Did I really need to see Anthony Perkins getting head in a movie theater in a show revolving around Ed Gein? Or Ilse Koch, the bitch of Buchenwald, having sex with a prisoner in a cell, or even the scene between Ed and Bernice, which I thought was very foul. But I will say, Ed being a cross-dresser and wearing women's panties and brasiers, which he did do in real life, was disturbingly effective. Like they say in the show, he wasn't gay per se, because he was interested in women, but he liked dressing up as one. Unfortunately, going so far to the point where he would make skin suits out of them. I must say, Ed Gein did not use a chainsaw in any of his crimes. The scene where Ed kills the two men in the woods with the chainsaw is highly fictional. Moving on to the finale. We do know that Ed's about to die if you're familiar with the timeline, but the hallucination/dreamy sequence where he's getting wheeled down the hallway with only a broken heart playing, and to have the most famous serial killers applauding and thanking Ed for being a quote-unquote pioneer to them felt very odd to me. This is the moment that comes to mind the most, where I said earlier that some of the hallucinations felt very whimsical. After Gein dies, we do cut to a group of rowdy guys in a graveyard getting drunk, and they steal his headstone, which did give me a little bit of a chuckle. And his headstone is still missing in real life, so I thought this scene was a bit of a nice touch. Now this one's a bit of a smaller nitpick. I don't mind language at all. In fact, I curse like a sailor. But from watching the interviews that happened around this time, 1950s Wisconsin, the townspeople seem to talk very clean and well-mannered. There's some lines of dialogue in here that rival Seth Rogen in American Pie. I was very surprised with how vulgar some of the lines are. Going back to Charlie Hunnam's performance, which I did majorly enjoy, his accent does slip out here and there. The biggest example I can think of is when he confronts Bernice about the rumors of her venereal disease, and as we get closer to the finale. There are moments where I thought he sounded like Mrs. Doubtfire. But overall, I've been familiar with Ed Gein and his horrible crimes for about a decade or so, and I was ecstatic for the season. Charlie Hunnam does a great job here. He gives it 100%. Laurie Metcalf is phenomenal. The The acting from the supporting cast is more than solid. Nobody slouches in this department. But I was just expecting this season to be more on the accurate side and found it to be overall about 60% accurate. The 40% that was made up rubbed me the wrong way for such a dark topic revolving around a real-life serial killer and his victims. But that's just my 2 cents. I'm going to give the 3rd season of Monster, the Ed Gein story, a 6 out of 10. And that's it, y'all. It's your boy Fro. That was my thoughts. What did you think about the Ed Gein story, the Netflix version? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Like and subscribe. It helps the channel and your boy. Got my Patreon in my description box and all that jazz. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm out. Bong, Frotober 2025.